the light he carried across. On the night his wife died, Elias Rowe sailed into the open sea with no intention of coming back. He did not leave a note. He did not lock the door. He did not even blow out the little candle beside her empty bed. He simply walked down to the harbor, untied his old fishing boat, and pushed it into the black water while the whole town slept behind him. Above him, the moon was full and pale. Before him, the sea stretched endlessly into the dark. And behind him, in the small white house by the shore, the woman he had loved for 15 years was gone. Her name was Clara. For 15 years, Clara had been the warmest thing in his life. She was the kind of woman who laughed softly, even when pain made her hands tremble. She sang while washing dishes. She placed wildflowers in cracked glass bottles. She believed every storm had an ending, every winter had a thaw, and every lost person could still find their way home. Elias had never believed in much, but he believed in Clara, and when illness came for her, slowly at first, then cruelly, he watched the light leave their home one small piece at a time. At first, she only grew tired in the afternoons. Then she stopped walking to the market. Then she stopped singing. By the final winter, she could no longer climb the stairs without his arm around her. Still, every night, she asked him to open the window so she could hear the sea. "Listen," she would whisper. To what, Elias would ask, though he already knew. "To the waves," she said. "They never stop coming back." He hated those words after she died, because the waves came back. The moon came back. Morning came back. But Clara did not. The town of Bellwether had always known Elias as a quiet man. He ran the ferry between the mainland and the small islands beyond the bay. Every morning before sunrise, he carried fishermen, teachers, nurses, children, male, and old women with baskets of bread across the water. He was not unfriendly. He simply lived like a man saving his words for someone who was no longer there. After Clara's funeral, people came to the house with soup, bread, flowers, and gentle voices. Elias thanked them. Then he closed the door. For 7 days, he did not open it again. On the 8th night, he found Clara's final letter. It was tucked inside the old blue coat she used to wear when they walked along the beach. The envelope had his name written on it. Elias. Just one word. But his hand shook before he even opened it. Inside, the paper smelled faintly of lavender. Her handwriting was weak, but every line still felt like her voice. "My dearest Elias, if you are reading this, then I have crossed a shore you cannot follow yet. I know you. You will think love has ended because my chair is empty. You will think the house is silent because I am gone. But love does not live only in a body. Sometimes, love becomes the lamp in the window. Sometimes, it becomes the hand that steadies another person. Sometimes, it becomes the courage to stay. Promise me one thing. When the sea feels too dark, do not wait for someone else to save you. Light the lantern yourself. Cross the water. Come home, Clara." Elias read the letter once, then again, then a third time, until the words blurred. For a moment, he hated her for knowing him so well. Then he folded the letter, placed it in his coat, and walked out into the night. That was how he ended up alone on the sea beneath a full moon, with Clara's letter pressed against his chest, and no clear desire to see another sunrise. The boat moved quietly through the dark water. The little cabin lamp flickered behind him. Bellwether's harbor grew smaller and smaller until it became only a handful of golden dots along the shore. Elias kept sailing, past the breakwater, past the old lighthouse, past the safe waters where the ferry usually turned. The sea opened around him. Cold wind cut across his face. The waves lifted the boat and lowered it again, as gently as breathing. He closed his eyes. For the first time in 15 years, no one was waiting for him. No warm voice would call from the kitchen. No hand would reach for his. No one would ask if he had eaten. The thought was so hollow, it almost felt peaceful. Then the cabin radio crackled. At first, Elias thought it was only static. He ignored it. The radio crackled again. Then a child's voice came through, thin and frightened. "Can anyone hear me?" Elias opened his eyes. The voice returned, broken by static. Please, we can't see the shore." He stared at the radio. For a few seconds, he did nothing. The voice came again. "My dad is hurt. The boat is filling with water. Please, if anyone can hear me." Elias gripped the wheel. Every part of him wanted to keep sailing into the dark. But then he heard Clara's voice in his memory. "Light the lantern yourself. Cross the water. Come home." Elias reached for the radio. "This is the ferry boat Morning Star," he said, his voice rough from silence. "Tell me where you are." There was a pause. Then the child answered, crying now. "I don't know. We saw the lighthouse before the fog came in. Now everything is dark." Elias turned toward the old lighthouse. Its beam should have been sweeping across the bay, but the tower was black. No light, no signal, no guide. He cursed under his breath. The lighthouse had gone out, and somewhere in the dark, a child and his injured father were drifting toward the rocks. Elias pushed the throttle forward. The old boat shuddered, then surged through the waves. Fog rolled low across the water, thick as smoke. The moon disappeared behind it. The sea became a black room with no walls. Elias knew these waters better than any man in Bellwether. He knew where the rocks waited beneath the surface. He knew where the tide pulled hard toward the cliffs. He knew which currents lied to you and which winds could turn a small mistake into a funeral. But grief had made him reckless. Now fear made him precise. He lit the front lamp. Then another. Then he took Clara's old emergency lantern from beneath the bench, struck the switch, and hung it from the bow. A warm circle of light opened against the fog. Small, fragile, but real. "I'm coming," he said into the radio. "Keep talking to me." The child's voice trembled. "My name is Noah." "All right, Noah, I'm Elias. Tell me what you hear." "Water," Noah whispered. "And rocks." "How close?" "I don't know. Listen carefully. Do you hear them in front of you or beside you?" There was a pause. "On the right?" Elias adjusted course. The morning star cut through the fog. The waves slapped hard against the hull. For a moment, Elias thought of Clara again, lying in bed during her final week, watching moonlight move across the ceiling. "Are you afraid?" he had asked her. She had smiled faintly. "Of dying? No." "Then what?" "Of you forgetting how to live." Now, standing at the wheel with salt on his lips and the dark pressing in around him, Elias understood the cruelty and mercy of those words. The radio crackled. "I see a light," Noah cried. Elias leaned forward. Through the fog, he saw it. Not a lighthouse, not a star. A tiny flashlight waving from the deck of a small boat, dangerously close to the black teeth of the rocks. Elias swung the morning star around and threw a rope. "Catch it," he shouted. The first throw missed. The second landed across the smaller boat's rail. Noah grabbed it with both hands. Elias pulled. The rope burned against his palms. The little boat slammed against a wave and nearly turned sideways. For one terrible second, Elias thought he would lose them. Then he wrapped the rope around the cleat and pulled with everything he had left. Slowly, painfully, the boat drifted away from the rocks. When it came close enough, Elias jumped down and helped Noah climb aboard. The boy was shaking, soaked to the bone, no older than 9. "My dad," he sobbed. Elias crossed to the other boat and found the man unconscious. Bleeding from a cut above his brow, he was still breathing, barely. Elias tied another line, dragged the damaged boat behind him, and turned back toward shore. The fog had grown worse. The lighthouse was still dark. The harbor lights were hidden. For a moment, even Elias could not tell where home was. Then Noah whispered, "How do we get back?" Elias looked at the dead lighthouse. He looked at the black sea. Then he looked at Clara's lantern glowing from the bow. "Small, fragile, enough. We follow the light we have," he said. The journey back took nearly an hour. Elias kept one hand on the wheel and the other near the radio. Noah sat wrapped in an old blanket, watching him with wide eyes. "Are you scared?" the boy asked. Elias almost said no. Instead, he told the truth. "Yes." Noah looked surprised. "But you still came." Elias stared ahead. That's what people do when someone is lost. By the time they reached Bellwether, half the town was awake. Red emergency lights flashed across the harbor. People ran down the dock shouting. Doctors took Noah's father away. Noah's mother arrived barefoot, crying so hard she could barely stand. She held her son, then turned to Elias and tried to speak. But no words came. Elias only nodded. He had no room inside him for gratitude. Not yet. As the crowd moved around him, he looked up at the lighthouse. Men were already climbing the tower to repair the lamp. The beam flickered once, then twice. Finally, the great white light swept across the sea again. Everyone cheered. But Elias did not. He looked at the little lantern still hanging from his boat. Clara's lantern, the one that had cut through the dark before the lighthouse returned. The next morning, Elias went home. For the first time since Clara died, he opened every window in the house. Cold sea air moved through the rooms. The curtains lifted gently. On the kitchen table, her cup still sat where she had left it. For a long time, Elias stood there, waiting for the pain to crush him. It did not. It remained heavy, quiet, but no longer endless. He made tea, 2 cups at first, by habit. Then he looked at the second cup and almost broke. Instead, he placed it by the window. "For you," he whispered. Days passed, then weeks. Elias returned to the ferry. At first, people spoke to him gently, as if he were made of glass. But slowly, life came back in ordinary ways. Children ran across the dock. Fishermen complained about the weather. Old women asked him to carry their baskets. Noah came every Friday after school and helped polish the brass bell on the boat. He never said much. Neither did Elias. But sometimes, silence is not empty. Sometimes it is simply 2 people resting beside the same wound. One evening in early spring, Noah brought Elias a paper bag filled with rolls from his mother's bakery. At the bottom was a folded note. "Thank you for bringing my boy home." Elias read it, and something inside him softened. That night, he took Clara's letter from his coat and read it again. The words no longer felt like goodbye. They felt like a map. Light the lantern yourself. Cross the water. Come home. Years later, people in Bellwether would still tell the story of the night the lighthouse went dark. They would say Elias Rowe saved a boy and his father, with nothing but an old ferry boat and a small lantern. Some would call him brave. Some would call it fate. But Elias knew the truth. He had not gone into the sea to save anyone. He had gone because he was lost. And somehow, in the middle of that darkness, another lost voice had called out to him. That was the strange mercy of life. Sometimes, the person drowning is the one who learns to pull others from the water. Sometimes, the heart that has broken becomes the place where light escapes. And sometimes, after love leaves the world in one form, it returns in another. In a child's voice over a radio, in a lantern swinging from the bow of a boat, in a cup of tea beside an open window, in the courage to wake up the next morning and keep going. On quiet nights, Elias still sailed beneath the moon. He still missed Clara. He always would, but he no longer believed she was only behind him. Some nights, when the sea was calm and the lighthouse beam crossed the water, Elias could almost hear her beside him. "Listen," she would say, to what he would ask, and in the hush between the waves, he would hear the answer. They never stopped coming back. So Elias kept returning, to the harbor, to the ferry, to the people who needed crossing, to the house by the shore, to the life he thought had ended. And every night before he slept, he lit Clara's lantern in the window, not because he was waiting for her to come home, but because somewhere in the dark, someone might be looking for a light. And Elias had finally understood, no one crosses grief all at once. No one reaches the other shore in a single night. But if you keep one small light burning, if you take one breath, one step, one tide at a time, even the loneliest soul can find its way back.